Alright, my friends, let's talk today about harmonizing. Alright? So this idea of harmonizing, in this case our guitars or our voices, it could be anything, a piano, but obviously we're talking about guitar, since this is the guitar system, right? And we're going to be talking about harmonization, what it is, and how we might do this. Okay, so what you were hearing there was I was using a looper pedal. I had a chord playing, and then I had one guitar that was previously recorded on a loop, and then I was looping another part. Specifically, the song is called Burning for You by Blue Oyster Cult, and I thought it would be a great example for this in actually learning how to harmonize. We may or may not use this particular song. But I am going to teach you the concept of harmonization. So let's talk about harmonization in general, and then let's drill down to what that means to us on the fretboard. So harmonization is the idea of playing a note other than the unison, or other than the primary note, I should say. So there's some assumptions going on when we're talking about harmonization. But basically, we have a melody. The melody is the main line. That would be vocal melody or maybe a guitar solo or something like that. And then typically, a harmony is an afterthought, something that's put on after, or maybe, in recording it's an overdub or something like that. But basically, it's notes that complement the already made melody line. Okay, that's a complicated way of saying that. And usually it's a note that's going to be either 3 or 5 steps away, or I should say it's a third or a fifth away from the primary note. So that's where we're going to be talking about this more in detail. Now, technically, a harmony does not have to be harmonic. So this is where this can be an opinion type thing. But basically, if we have a chord that's very dissonant, then we can actually have, that can actually be harmonic, okay? Or that could be harmony, okay? So basically harmony is any note other than just playing the one note, okay? On top of which would be playing unison. Harmony is playing some other note, okay? So this would be a harmony. That's a terrible harmony, but it's a harmony. That's what we call minor seconds. They don't sound too good because they're so close to each other that they rub. But as we start becoming, as those two notes become further away from each other, that one harmonizes pretty good. This one's better. As they start getting away from each other, they start sounding better and not rubbing as much, okay? Now, with that being said, the basic rule for harmony is if you're at least 2 scale steps away from a particular note, you're not going to get that rub that we're talking about, okay? And so what I mean by scale steps is staying within the scale and moving away 2 scale steps instead of 2 frets or something like that, okay? So if my scale, say, is a G major scale, then I would play, if this is my 1, then to play the harmony above it, I'd have to skip a scale step, which is this note, skipping that guy and playing this note. So that's what we call a third. 1, 2, 3, because it's a third note in the scale. So if I do this, and I play this note with it, that's a harmony. Yeah, it's also the beginning of a G major chord. But a lot of times chords, or most of the time, chords are made up of notes that are harmonic together, okay? But played differently, the way that I just did it, like in a solo or something like that, has this really cool sound to it. So that's our harmony. Now if I went up to the 2, or the second scale step, then the 3 should come up to a 4. I go up to a 3, the 4 should come up to a 5. Notice they're always 2 steps away from each other. So a 1 and a 3, a 2 and a 4, a 3 and a 5, a 4 and a 6, a 5 and a 7, a 6 and an 8, or a 1 again. Make sense? So 2 notes away, that's what we call harmonizing in thirds. Now we can do this above or below the primary note, doesn't matter. Just depends on what it is that you want to paint with your music. So you may want to hear a harmony below. What I was doing just now is the primary note was a higher note. And the harmony was and played together. Sounds like what I did in the beginning of the video. Okay? And so this melody is the primary, and then this would be 1/3 below it. And that's why it sounds so nice and harmonic together, because I went through the scale, or the writers of the song went through the scale and said, these are the notes that are going to harmonize best with it, 1/3 below it. They could have done something above it, a 1/3 above it, and that would have sounded good too. Or a 1/5 above it, or a 1/5 below it. Those are the ones that are most common, the 1/3s and the 5ths. You could do 4ths, you could do 6s, you could do 7ths. When you hear barbershop, quartet type stuff, a lot of those guys are singing 1s, 3s, 5s, and 7s. And so they're coming up with these jazz sounding chords. That's why barbershop quartets sound the way they do, with very tight harmonies. Okay, so if we played this basic melody, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. If we did that, our harmony would be, again, 2 notes above everything, would be 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, and together. Oh, did a light just go on? I think it did. The first time I discovered this, I flipped out, because the bands that I was listening to were doing a lot of harmonization. A lot of rock bands that I was into were doing this sort of thing, and I always wanted to know how they came up with that sound. What a cool sound, you know? So, let's say I'm going to pick out a different, maybe not so scalar melody. Let's go... So 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, 5, 4. Then I would go. That would be my harmony. How do I know this? I'm partially using my ear, but then I kind of know the scale, the way it's going to go up, and that sort of thing. It's just from studying, but you'll get good at this. You can use your ear, but chances are you're going to use the scale to begin with. So. Hear that harmony is there. Sounds really nice, right? Now you can do this for major keys, you can do this for minor keys, you can do this for any, it doesn't matter what key you're in, C, G, F, doesn't matter. And all the rules work the same. You just need to pick a note out that's going to be either 2 scale steps away, what we call a 1/3, or 5ths. You can do either one. And again, just so you are sure about this, you're going to play something. If you're harmonizing in 1/3s, which is the one that sounds the most, I should say, pleasant. And again, this is a matter of opinion, but I think they sound the most pleasant because they have the most amount of information in them in regards to the chord and that sort of thing. They have the most flavor, if you will. 5ths tend to be a little bit sterile because they're almost always the same distance away from each other, so they're somewhat predictable, whereas majors and minors change with the sounds of chords, majors and minor chords. So, again, if this is our melody, 1, we're going to go up 2 notes. So, moving 1, So here we go. 2, 3. So we went to the third note, but we only moved twice. So here's our 1. And here we are. We're going to move. 2, 3. Okay, so we have a third and our fourth. So on and so on. So what I want you to do, this is how to practice this, is I want you to take the attached G major scale, and I want you to go through this with some really basic melodies. It doesn't matter where you're at in the scale, okay? Just make sure you're a third away. And play the melody. You could do this on 1 string, you could do it on 2 strings, you could use a looper pedal, you could have a friend do it, you could use a recorder, you could find a harmony from a song that's on the radio, something that you could play over and over again if you know what key it's in. You find your scale. If it's in the key of C, use your C major scale. Find out what that melody is. Work it into your scale. It's always going to be in the scale, or 99% of the time it's going to be in the scale. And then find your third away from each one of those and come up with a melody. You can do this for anything. You can do it for singing. In fact, if you find yourself singing harmonies in the car or wherever you're at when you're listening to songs and you're singing harmonies and you know they sound good and you say, I know I do great harmonies, then you are automatically singing thirds, most likely, maybe fifths, but most likely you're singing thirds. Those are the ones that sound really nice. And our brains are able to do this with our ear better than oftentimes with theory. But when it comes to a guitar, it's not your voice. You're used to being able to make pitches and to move it, to correct things very quickly. But on a fretboard, you need to know where you're going in regards to the scale. All right? All right, my friends, have fun with this. Take your time. Do apply the lesson, because I promise it's going to help a ton, especially if you're doing any sort of lead work and want to have some great harmonies. All right, let's keep going.